101. We're going to cover everything from starting a park to closing a park. We're going to talk awards. We're going to name board of directors. Whatever conversation pops up, that's where we're going to take it. What I'm going to ask us to do to get things started, starting on my left with Marcus. Introduce yourself. Give us a little bit of the qualifier, and then maybe a topic or two that you want to make sure we discuss as the time is going on. All right, so Marcus.
My name is Marcus Bjornsson. I am a Knight of the Crown. I have served as Monarch, Kingdom Regent. I served on the board of directors for the Kingdom of Crystal Groves, and I have served at local park offices my entire Amtgard career.
I'm Sir Toda Bjornsson. I'm a Knight of the Flame. I've held just about every office in Amtgard except for Kingdom Regent, I believe. And I've also participated in the putting together and founding of a kingdom and putting parks together and stuff, and that's kind of what I'd like to talk about today.
Mono?
My name is Hitorimono, aka Mono. I've served in King Prime Minister 3 times. I'm stepping into King today. I've pretty much served in varying positions in all the levels of parks.
Good. Prada?
I'm Prada, and I serve at the local level, and I kind of focus on Amtgard and education with school clubs and working with teens a lot.
I'll say it again at the end, but thank you to each of you for taking time out of your event to talk with us here today. So we'll get right at it. Again, the title is Leadership 101. So Marcus, what does it mean to be an Amtgard leader?
Well, to be an Amtgard leader, you pretty much need to be there. You need to be at your park on a weekly basis. You need to be available for your constituents, as it were. You need to basically in everything you do, you need to be looking to improve upon the game.
Okay. Toda, did you want to elaborate?
I think leadership in Amtgard boils down to a process. And I'm sure most of you military types, or people who have military or Boy Scout experience, know that there is a process to leadership that involves identification of your strengths, your weaknesses, and what assets you have, and then the proper allocation of those assets. And that's one of the fundamental things that we don't really pass on actively in Amtgard, is there are effective leadership processes we can use. We don't have to have this, cowboy reinvent the wheel the whole time. Plenty of professional organizations out there use these principles, use these policies, and I think it would be great for Amtgard to start getting into that so that we can properly train up new leadership, because that's one of the problems we're having here in Crystal Groves in the past is we didn't have depth of bench. We had the same people running the same offices, the same positions over and over and over again, and nobody new was being trained to step into those positions, and those older people were getting burned out. And by adding some sort of structured leadership process to Amtgard, we avoid the burnout and we get a more diverse base of skill sets. And I think that's really important for us.
If only there was a YouTube channel and Facebook kind of flame.
Exactly.
And other leadership things that were on the horizon for us to approach. So we'll consider that a plug that I just reinforced.
Yep.
So, Mono?
To be blunt, Amtgard leadership is a lot of herding cats. To be funny, but to be serious though, it like Toda was saying, there is a lot of realizing your strengths and your weaknesses, realizing your strengths and weaknesses of everybody around you, and being able to get to delegate duties. Basically, so a lot of leadership is delegation.
Prada?
I see it, again, because I mostly work with teens, I see it a lot as finding what gifts particular people have, helping them develop that, and normally it's by putting them in contact with people who do it better. So it's a lot of kind of social networking and giving positive feedback at each little kind of incremental improvement so they see the growth. Because it's hard to see kind of personal growth in the little things.
Okay, so let's talk about that. And I know you focused on being a local park leader, although I know you're involved in the board of directors. So you have the whole scope, but you're targeting your leadership, and you spoke about teams. What are some things that a local park leader can do, can start building that depth that Toda was talking about, especially when you have a park, a younger park?
Well, a lot of it is setting. When we talk teens, especially with the younger park, are you meaning younger, like the park's only been in existence for 2 years, or
The
younger
age of
teens?
my average park.
Okay. With teens, a lot of times is they have a lot of energy and they want to help, but they don't know what to do to help. So a lot of times what you'll interpret as a little apathy or a lack of involvement is often just they need someone to say, hey, go do this. And what you find is even little things like, here, go set this game up. That's not specific enough. It needs to be put this there, put that there. And honestly, teams will often jump and be ecstatic to be part of it. And from there, they start seeing, wait, there's a lot of moving parts to this, and I can contribute in small ways. And that's really how you grow those next leaders.
Okay. Toda, do you have to be an officer to be a leader?
No. A leader is a natural position, a natural thing. Granted, you do have to work at it, and you can become a good leader through hard work, just like you can do anything. But it'll come to a point where suddenly all of those things you've been learning click, and they come to you as second nature. And by encouraging others along the way, you kind of see how leadership applies when you watch them go out and use the same principles, but in a slightly different manner. So you don't necessarily have to be an officer to get the job done, to organize people. It's like for the last 4 or so years, 3 years, I've been kind of off the officer thing, but I've still been a leader in our kingdom by mentorship, by being available as a resource, and also by stepping in at the appropriate moments when there's a quote-unquote crisis point and helping the officers that are there. That's the fundamental thing about leadership, is identifying a need and being able to step up and fill that need. So that's why I think that, being an officer is not necessarily the same as being a leader back and forth. You can be one without the other, and it's great if your officers are leaders. It's not always going to happen.
I'm not going to let you move on because you said something in there that needs a little bit of clarification. You talked about leadership being a natural gift. So you got it or you don't?
No, it's a natural thing. It's not really a gift. It's more of you become comfortable in the role when you apply those principles.
Okay.
And it becomes second nature. And I've seen it time and time again with young people coming into our sport and also coming into the military and various other things, where they start out unsure of themselves, unsure of situations and whatnot, not knowing that they can assert themselves and do the stuff that they need to do, and then 5 years later, suddenly being able to assert yourself, being able to formulate a plan, being able to assess strengths and weaknesses become automatic because it's drilled into you.
Okay. Talked a little bit about fundamentals. I saw some head nod and stuff like that. We're going to go straight down the line, Marcus, all the way down to Prada. 1 or 2 at most. What are those fundamentals of leadership that come to mind? Marcus, you get to go with a clean slate. You're first.
Well, a willingness to spend your time for other people would be what I would say is probably the biggest cornerstone there. I mean, there is being a leader in our game and in any social organization, there's a significant time requirement to be effective in making sure just the day-to-day things happen. And there's a willingness to say, like you said, sacrifice part of your event to do these kind of panels, or to be the autocrat in an event. You're going to run this entire event. You're probably not going to sleep for 48 hours, because at every 10 minutes, someone is coming up and is saying, "Hey, I need this. Hey, I need that. I need this," and it's just something that, as a leader, you learn how to handle that sort of stuff.
Toda, what's one of those key fundamentals?
Organization. Having your, pardon my French, shit together so that when the crisis happens, you can pretty much pick up and go and get done what needs to be done without wasting unnecessary time trying to get ready for the task. So if you have, certain core fundamental principles down pat, you know, you can just pick up and go. So that's one thing. The other thing would be people skills. I don't care how organized you are. I don't care how, you know, much time you put in. If you can't effectively communicate with who you're trying to get or who you're trying to work with, you're not going to get anywhere. So you got to be able to talk to people, and you got to be able to relay the information to them in a format that they can understand, they can grok, to use a military / term, that, you know, it works, and that they can easily translate on to other people. So I think those are probably my two fundamental things for leadership.
Mona?
Patience. If you don't have the patience to deal with people, then you're going to get upset. You're going to lose what you're trying to do by giving in to them upsetting you, or, you know, things like that. So by having patience to be able to, like, sometimes take a step back and see where the other person is coming from in that situation, it'll help you out.
Okay. Prada?
I would say the two things. The first is communication, which is what I honestly think both of the previous two are saying as well. It's if you can't communicate effectively, you're creating problems for yourself. I think that the bulk of problems people have honestly stems from poor communication. And the other is kind of drive, ambition, kind of a no such thing as halfway crooks. If you're going to do it, you go all out.
Let's talk about communication. You talked about education. Maybe what do you say to someone who's already identified that they have a weakness with communication? How can they improve?
That's something that I think could be a mentor can help with, because you start out by just working with identifying your issue and then working with someone in kind of the echo sort of listening and making sure when I communicate in this way, double check with other people. What message did the audience pick up? Because if I believe I'm communicating one message and the person receiving the message is receiving something totally different, then I need to work on where did I have a breakdown.
Anybody else want to add to that?
That's pretty spot on.
It was brought up earlier, and Toda, I think you brought it up, but I'm going to toss this one out there. As a leader, it was mentioned that you may go an event or something, or lose sleep for 48 hours because people are constantly needing things. During the night's panel, they actually talked about delegation and seeing that as a leader's role. Can you have it both ways? Is there a right or is there a wrong? Anybody want to try and clarify that for us? Marcus?
Well, delegation is very important, and to a limited extent, you can delegate most things, but even unless you're delegating everything, which is probably a dereliction of your responsibility, you're going to have, I mean, even if you delegate well and masterfully, you're going to have things come up that only you can handle.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's the responsibility of, in the case of an event, of the autocrat.
So each of you already mentioned you've already been, you served in office, and Marcus, I'll focus on you because it sounded like you've been in office almost since you signed your first waiver.
Mm-hmm. That's my boy.
What drives you to be, what drove you to be an officer?
Well, I have a background. I'm an Eagle Scout, and so I've been in leadership positions pretty much my entire life. At least since I was old enough to tie my shoes. And so it's just something that's kind of ingrained in me. But as far as Amtgard goes, I get a tremendous amount of satisfaction from helping other people have fun.
Mona, you're about to step up as king. Why?
It kind of boils down to that somebody has to do it, And while there are a lot of people out there who can do it, sometimes those people need to just enjoy the game and to recuperate from being in office. So, sometimes you just have to be the one to step up and, say, this is my time. I'm going to make sure that, things are going well and the burden falls on me.
Prada, what's the biggest challenge and how did you address it as a leader that you faced?
The biggest challenge?
Yes.
Well, partially because I'm an educator and a lot of our field and our park are teens, particularly. I'm okay with dealing with teens. I could see where teens would be a challenge in a lot of fields, however, but automatically as an educator, I get a certain level of respect from them. And I have the pattern that a teacher has of you set expectations, you communicate those expectations, and then from there, most people rise up to those expectations. And whenever they don't, often it's because they just need help getting to it. Nobody sets out to be a failure. Nobody sets out to suck. They want to do better at whatever it is. So you just have to help them get there.
Toda, how important is leadership to becoming a knight?
Leadership, I think, is one of the founding principles of knighthood. It's what separates a master from a knight. A master is a person who has great skill, or kung fu, if you want to call it, in a certain area. But the same master who is able to take a group of disparate individuals and organize them into essentially a unit for the purpose of either running an event or whatnot, that's the type of thing we should be looking to our knights too. And that's why I had said in the knights panel that knight is really a leadership position in an office as opposed to an award. People are looking to you to make things happen, and because you have that white belt, you're a leader. You know, if you can't handle the responsibilities of leadership, go back to being a master.
Okay. So it sounds like we identified some fundamentals of leadership. Sounds like we identified some personal and game values to having leaders and that we have a need. So we've identified the skills that are needed. We've identified the need. How do we connect those things and nurture those today? What I mean by that is, how did you become a leader, and what kind of thoughts do you put into taking on a leadership role? Mono, you're stepping up.
I first started into office back in the Midwest as just a local guildmaster of Reeves. And I mean, at the time, that's all it was needed of me to do. But when I moved out here to the East Coast, I basically came into a two-man shire and stepped into the prime minister role because that's what was needed. So for me, I think a lot of my time as leadership, it was just kind of, that's what was needed to be done. And so I stepped into that role because, it needed to be done. I forgot where I was going with this.
Sometimes there's a trial by fire.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Based off of that need and stuff like that. Okay. Marcus, how about for you? What are some thoughts do you get behind whenever you know you're about to take charge of something or take on that leadership role?
Well, something that I deal with a lot is doubt. When you're the one in charge, there's kind of an inherent feeling of doubt that you're doing the right thing, and it's something you have to, with experience, you learn to go with your instinct on that sort of stuff. And sometimes you can't be afraid to fail. I mean, it's not leaders. The best leaders are able to fail at what they're doing and pick up the pieces and make it work. Basically, plans fall through. People don't do what you expect them to do. People just plain do the opposite of what you expect them to do. And good leaders are able to go with the flow with that and get over their own personal problems and make it work, basically.
I also think part of it, too, is having people around you who will call you out when you're being an idiot. Sycophants serve nobody. And having someone that you can trust to say, that's wrong. And even if you disagree with them, then I think that in disagreement there should be an encouragement. If you think I'm wrong about how this is being organized, then you do it better. Get that sense of competition. If, for whatever it is, if you think a a particular game designer isn't doing as well as you would want, then encourage those people, then fine, step up. Take that title from them. Be a better game designer. Be a better role player, be a better fighter, whatever it is. Organize something better. And to be a good leader, I think you need to encourage that challenge in the other person. And you also need to have people who will say, look, you're being an idiot, you need to shut up.
Well, I mean, not to put anyone on the spot, but like Mono and I have had a fair bit of, a fair portion of our Amtgard careers have run parallel to each other, and we both have had leader. We've worked together. We've been, he was my prime minister, and having someone who has a different perspective on what you do, what your leadership is absolutely beneficial to being a better leader. Because if, like he said, sycophants help no one. If you've got just yes people, that's when bad things happen.
And that's when ruts occur.
Yeah, backslides.
Yep.
And I mean, I frankly appreciate Mono for calling me out on my bullshit.
Yes.
So, he's to be friendly in front of the camera and an audience. But in all seriousness, so how do I find that person? I mean, who wants to go out and act, hey, I'm looking for somebody that disagrees with me on everything. How do I nurture a relationship like that that's constructive, Ronnie?
I think it's the communication thing again, and it's if you can communicate. Someone who's decent at communication often can recognize the value in what someone is saying, even if they're perhaps terrible at phrasing it, or even if you disagree heavily with their argument, you still understand the spirit behind it. If you can recognize that, cultivate that relationship. Get that kind of, I see where you're coming from. I disagree on this point. I disagree heavily on this point. And we'll never agree on this point. But you care about it. And that's good. Cultivate that relationship. That's someone who will give you a perspective that might be needed.
Okay, I think communication is a really broad term that can be heard a couple of different ways. Can you elaborate just a little bit on when you're talking about communication? Do you mean I need to practice public speaking, or do I need to talk about personal skills?
Yes. That's exactly what it is. Public speaking is probably a little less important because you can prepare for public speaking. That can be practiced. You can get people to step in and be your voice if you need to speak before a crowd. Personal skills, though, absolutely. And that's where the professionalism comes in. Because without personal skills, you're going to have a hard time securing solid sites, dealing with legal things, dealing with the world outside of the game itself. And that's how we grow the game. That's how when we're talking to the parents to say, no, look, this isn't creepy.
Yeah.
You need people skills. When you're talking to the schools and saying, hey, we want an indoor site so our numbers don't drop in the winter, you present with people skills and come across in a professional manner, you become treated like a rec league by the city. And that's when you can get all kinds of doors open purely for those professional skills. And public speaking is a benefit, but not necessary.
Marcus?
Something as a pro tip for the aspiring leader, to take a note from the comedians Key and Peele, have a rage interpreter. When I was king and I had to deal with a lot of stuff, I ran pretty much everything I wrote down by a good friend of mine who would read over and go, no, that's absolutely, you sound like a lunatic. You need to rewrite this. And I think I came off pretty good, when I rewrote everything, and it came out coherent, it came out professional, as opposed to, wow, that king's a shrieking, expletive deleted.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about professionalism in office. There's mention earlier about you have to devote time, you have to, dedicate yourself and give yourself to other people. What does it mean to demonstrate professionalism in Amtgard? And I'm going to give you the context of during the Amtgard day or the Amtgard event. So internally, what does professional Amtgarding look like? Toda?
To me, professional Amtgarding means that no matter how trivial, or professional leadership in Amtgard, being professional at it, no matter how trivial somebody's concern is when they approach you as a leader, you have to give them your time and your effort to make sure that their fears or their problem or their issue is assuaged. You can't blow them off. I mean, even if you think that their issue is so asinine that it doesn't merit discussion, they feel it's important enough to them that they're willing to approach you on it. And you have to treat them with a modicum of respect, and you have to treat their problem seriously, even though you may not feel it is. And that's where professionalism comes in, being able to separate your personal opinions aside and address the problem that this individual has come to you from. That's where I think that lies in.
Mona, you want to elaborate on?
I definitely agree with where he was coming from in regards to that. Also, it has to do with, as mentioned before, patience. Everyone's time is important. So if they feel that what they're coming to you with is important to them, then, like I said, you just can't blow them off. You have to, listen to them and not just, okay, blah blah, not act. You actually actively have to be listening to them, respond to them, address their points, figure out where they're coming from and why that's an issue, and then if it's not actually an issue, still treat it as an issue.
Yeah, be able to communicate to them why it's not an issue.
Yeah.
In the current context. It may have been an issue 10 years ago. It may be an issue 5 years from now. But if it's not currently relevant, you need to be able to explain to that person that, yeah, you've got a valid point there, but at this time, and being professional, they appreciate that. They'll see it, and they're more likely to approach Amtgard leadership again if they've been treated in that type of manner.
Respectfully.
Marcus?
On that note of treating people respectfully, and they will treat you back. In some instances, no matter how professional you are, you are going to have people that will just not recognize that.
Yeah.
And it's your responsibility as an officer to maintain that decorum, even in the face of other people acting a fool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what you signed up to do. It's when you're an officer, you're no longer private citizen Joe Amtgard. You are the public face of whatever position you are a part of, and it does your position a disservice if you can't maintain that professionalism, and it undermines your point.
Prada, do you want to elaborate on?
Well, just we're in a connected day and age. So as far as professionalism goes, as we're standing out at an event and you're doing anything, you can just assume someone's live tweeting it and filming it and posting it. And I think part of the professionalism is thinking about, what am I projecting to whomever we're renting from, or what's going to be on the next news channel and things like that. And keep in mind, at every moment, everyone is the face of the organization.
I hate to keep harping on you about the teenage thing and the educator, but I think you've been a valuable part, a very relevant part to today's conversation when we start talking about the broad spectrum of players. We've got folks who've been playing 30 years. We've got folks who are walking into the park for their first time. Aspiring leader, seasoned leader, what are some things that we need to be cognizant of when communicating across generational gaps or those generational lines?
Specifically going to those new players, because to be quite honest, they're the heart and soul of Amtgard. They're not jaded. They're not cynical. They are doing pure fun and the joy of the game. So coming across to them and helping them maintain that to some extent. How can you take what they have, that kind of joy and passion for it, and spread it to other folks? And I think that from a veteran player, going in and working with them is not just, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong, here, let me show you the right way to do it. It's recognizing the bits that they're doing correctly first and changing things one at a time. You don't have to tell them, if you're teaching them fighting, you don't have to show them every single thing they're doing incorrectly. Show them one thing they're doing correctly, compliment two things that they are doing correctly, or pseudo-correctly. They'll figure the rest out on their own. And that's kind of that leadership. You model that method of interacting with people, and then after they've been in the game for a year or two, they'll do that. They'll do the same thing of finding the good in each person.
Does anybody care to elaborate?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Good job.
So,
Do I get gum?
here's my gum.
Sorry.
I see you're-
Almonds.
That's
It's a Squire night thing.
Does everybody have it in them to become a leader? Marcus?
I think everyone has the potential to become a leader, but unless you go into that honestly with an introspective attitude that you are going to learn from this, then, I mean, there are certain people that they just aren't going to be able to do that. And so, yes, I think everyone can be a leader. No, I don't think everyone will be a leader.
I think that leadership is a skill. That, basically when you first start doing it, you're not going to be a good leader. You're not going to have the requisite skills to be able to be a functional leader. But the more you examine what other people are doing as leaders, the more you try to be a leader, the more that you try to learn from your mistakes, the better that skill is going to be. And as long as you work on that skill, you have the potential to become a leader. Now, it might be a small amount of time that transition happens. It might be a long time. It might never happen. But it's a skill. And as long as you use that skill, then it's possible.
Any advice on how we're going to go almost polar opposite, on a young, inexperienced, a young first-time monarch of a small land deals with a seasoned veteran that they're trying to rein in?
Yeah.
Tips?
Oh, that's one of the
Marcus
toughest.
refuses to make eye contact.
Yeah. It's kind of one of the toughest Amtgard leadership situations you have, because you have, especially if it's an established player that has presence, so to speak, in more than one group or whatnot. If you've got a veteran of a local park, it's much different than dealing with somebody, say, who's lived in 3 or 4 different kingdoms and is now coming to your park, and you have to deal with them because you have that fame factor to deal with. And the thing I would tell the new up-and-coming monarch is that, we're all people. Underneath this tunic, this knight's belt, whatnot, I'm a person just like you. I'm no different. You don't have to be afraid of me. If you think that a veteran is doing something wrong, approach them. They might be. And if they give you crap that you've been in the game and whatnot, only 6 months, and I've been a veteran, we've been doing it for this years, well, that's something that, yeah, you've been in the game a long time, we've been doing it, but it may not be right for this park. It may not be right for this crowd. And you've got to be able to win them over. So that's going to be the hardest thing for that new person is winning that veteran over. And if you come at it from an aspect of, just negative on the veteran, you're old, you've been here, you know better, blah, 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 it's not going to work. You got to be able to establish that rapport, and newer leaders don't have the necessary tools to develop those rapports right away. So essentially, if you've got a veteran that's a problem and you need to deal with it and you're inexperienced, call your other veterans in, people with more experience too, to help you. If you're afraid of approaching that person alone, take one of the other officers with you. If they still give you crap, well, guess what? Bring more people. It really can be a situation where I have actually seen newer and inexperienced leaders be bullied into doing something that's completely wrong because an older veteran wanted it that way. And that's something we just can't. What are you looking at?
And if I may,
Yes.
You were next.
if I
Please.
may, and in situations like that, I think that is a failure of the leadership above.
Yes.
Because I think if you have a leader at a local park, they should be supported by leaders up above who can give them that support. And perhaps it's just kind of giving them a little bit of the steel in the spine to say, look at the power you do have. And if the person isn't going to follow whatever the rules are or play fair, play nice, etc., then this is how you go through the process, and you have our back at here. And that's often what I think at the local park being nervous is you really don't, as a new player, you don't know what power you really have. Can I say this, and the rule book says I can, but this person says that culturally we can't. They need people to say, no, you can.
I think you hit on something there that I just want to foot stomp is, just because you're the leader doesn't mean you can't ask for help.
Yeah.
Yeah. The leaders should be asking for help.
Not just to do the tasks, but for mentorship and additional guidance, and then maybe those that came before them.
Because you can't all do it all yourself. And that's one of the fundamental things I think about leadership is you got to realize that, yeah, I'm in charge, but I can't do it all.
Yeah.
So I'm going to find the smartest people, most capable people in each individual area where I'm weak, and then I'm going to apply their talents in those areas, and I'm going to try and encourage them in those areas so I can handle the things in my area and focus using my ability the best. So it all boils down into that delegation and leadership support. You know, getting it from above, getting it from below, back and forth.
So, scenario, I'm sold. I'm a young 16-year-old. I've watched every Amtgard Leadership University. I've read every Crown and Flame, and I'm ready to strike my, or make my name as a leader in Amtgard. Marcus, where do I start?
Your park. I mean, you can jump in. You can try to jump in at a kingdom level, or at inter-kingdom events or whatnot. But the fact of the matter is, the place you're going to be day to day, the place you're going to be, more than once a week usually, is your park. And if you don't have a strong park, trying to move up too quickly will hurt you and will hurt your park. When I first stepped up to a kingdom level position, we had the first term I was in office, I was kingdom regent. Toda was the kingdom monarch. Another guy from our park was kingdom champion. We left this massive vacuum of leadership in our park, and it took 2 or 3 years for our park to recover from the damage that was done by all of us stepping up at once. It was necessary because the kingdom there was a vacuum of leadership in the kingdom at the time. But, I mean, it took us, we probably would have been a barony within a year. Mm-hmm. We were a relatively new shire at the time. We probably would have been a barony within a year. But because of the leadership vacuum at the park level, it took us almost 5 years to become a barony.
So even well-intentioned leaders who did one thing still had a
Yep.
negative side they had to deal with, right?
Basically, don't bite off more than you can chew.
Yeah.
Sure.
Baby steps are a good thing when it comes to leadership because, if you do too much too soon, you're going to have a bad time, and it's going to be harder.
Mono, how did you strike out to be a leader in Amtgard?
Well, like I mentioned before, I started off as the Guildmaster of Reeves at a small shire. It was actually the second park that I belonged to. The first park was actually Cornetema, which is the center point for Rivermore. And when I played in Cornetema, all I did was play. Nothing was expected of me. I basically hadn't reached the point back where I wanted to get back to the game. But when I moved to Sioux City, I realized that I needed to. This park was not going to go forward unless somebody stepped up and helped out. So, start off small is my opinion. Start off at local level, do small things, build up to holding an office, get comfortable with the game first and foremost, and then build up, and build up.
Okay. Anybody have anything else they want to add there? Okay, so back to, or a little bit more on cultivating leadership. This is Leadership 101. As a mentor, what catches your eye as that spark of leadership? That's whenever you're looking around and stuff like that. What is there's potential there? What are some of the things that you start to recognize that there's some potential there? Prada?
For me, it's going to be that kind of chispa, that little bit of drive, that little bit of fire, and someone who's willing to kind of be snarky and sassy and say something back. There's someone who's going to. There's someone
Sorry,
who's
there's a big inside
going
joke at
to
this table right
stand
now.
up to other people because they have the potential to be the leader. They're the ones who, whenever they make a decision, and it's a decision they're allowed to make, and someone disagrees with it, they're not going to allow people to run over them. They have that little bit of fire, that little bit of
Passion.
edge. An edge. That's what I look for.
Marcus?
For me, there isn't a unifying thing that I look for You know, when I'm looking for when I'm finding someone to mentor. With all of the, like, for example, I have several underbelts. Each one is dramatically different in their style of leadership, their style of gameplay, and their personality. So I really don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, I'll know a leader when I see it, and I don't know what the defining characteristic is.
Okay. No, fair enough, fair enough. All right, well, it's about time to start wrapping things up. We're approaching that 45-minute mark, so takeaways. We'll start, Marcus, you just finished up some money. We're going to start with you. What's that foot stomp? What's that item? What's that last message you want to make sure whomever is watching this right now takes away from? Inspire us.
If you're wanting to get into leadership, start off small. Find something that you feel passionate about and work at it. You know, find people that can help you with that, and just kind of, you know, you're going to make mistakes. Admit it, move forward, learn from them, but definitely learn from them. Yeah.
Toda?
Develop a toolbox. And by toolbox, I mean a set of skills and individuals you can go to that when you have a problem, you can just open that toolbox and say, okay, I have a Marcus, I have a Prada, I have a Goldcrest. Which one of these is the best tool for the job? If it's rage stomping, I'm going to go look at Marcus because he's my rage squire. If it's a committee thing, I'm going to go look at Prada because he's good at that stuff. If it's putting together a panel and being the, you know, the Golden Knight pretty boy from Krypton, I'm going to Goldcrest for that. It's the same thing with basic fundamental skills. Know what you can do, what you can't do. Know what your populace can do so you have those resources. Being able to build that toolbox. Know what's in your toolbox so you have the right tool for the right job when you need it.
Prada?
Find whatever it is that you wish was better, and then go do it better. Find whatever it is that interests you in the game, and if you want to be a leader, figure out what needs improved, and then go do it. Just go do it.
Marcus?
I have two things.
Okay.
The first is you need to be available.
Yeah.
A good leader is available at all hours. I mean, I know we primarily play on the weekends, but I can't count the number of times I got a phone call at 10 o'clock at night or at, 6 a.m.
3 in the morning.
Or, well, depending. That was at Clan, so it was only like, it was like midnight for me. But you're going, as a leader, things are going to come up. They're going to come up at the least convenient time. Mm-hmm. And you need to accept that whatever time commitment you've planned for, double that. And then the other thing is, as I said before, you need to understand that you are going to fail. Mm-hmm. You are never going to do it perfectly. You are never going to, things are never going to go off without a hitch. But as long as you learn from that and make the best of it, that's what leadership is.
Outstanding. Well, we've surely taken up enough of your time. Again, all of our appreciation. Thank you very much for taking time out of your event to come spend some time with us, talk leadership. If I could please, a quick round of applause from the audience in the room. Hi, Goldcrest here from Amtgard Leadership University. Thanks for taking the time to watch our video. Please do us a favor, we'd love to hear from you. Go ahead and leave us a note by leaving a comment below. If you'd like to hear about new and upcoming events we've got going on, make sure you hit the subscribe button while you're here as well. Then jump over to Facebook and find us at Amtgard Leadership University, and that way you can keep up to date with our latest releases and the events that we're going to be visiting. If you'd like some more information about leadership and service in Amtgard, you can also visit our friends at Crown and Flame. You can find them online at crownandflame.com or on Facebook, also at Crown and Flame. Lastly, if you just want to hear more about Amtgard and the live-action role-playing game, make sure you swing by amtgard.com. Thanks again for watching the video.